Hello and welcome to a live Kerfefe break on Deprogrammed with Keri Smith. I'm your host, Keri, and today is Friday, March 15th. Happy Friday, everybody. I hope you have plans for a great weekend. It's beautiful in Texas here. It's a little overcast, which I don't mind at all. Just really pleasant weather though. And yeah, I'm feeling good. I hope you're feeling good. Today, we're gonna do kind of a I'm gonna touch on a couple different news subjects in the news rather than just focus on the WPATH files. We've done so far a four-part series. We're covering the WPATH files. That's the World Professional Association for Transgender Health. I encourage you to watch those, listen to those when you have time. I encourage you to read the WPATH files for yourself if you have the time for that. The link is below in the description of every single one of those videos. But after doing the one yesterday, I felt like I don't want to spend this whole video on it. I feel like I'm beating a dead horse at this point. So let me put this up on the screen. I'm going to do a brief recap. So two journalists put this report out, as we know, Michael Schellenberger, Mia Hughes, and I think it's a watershed moment. I think it's a dam breaking moment for this kind of so-called gender affirming care for kids, for bringing it to an end. And not just that, I hope it's a dam breaking moment for all of social justice and woke ideology. This report, the kind of stuff that's contained within, if you can just get people to read it, shows that doctors who are part of this association, this professional association, that they know that the children they're performing this so-called gender affirming care on, they know that they're incapable of giving informed consent. They are on video in these files. They are on the written record in these files, admitting that talking to a 14-year-old or talking to a 9-year-old about fertility, about possibly being sterilized, that they're talking to, in their own words, they said talking to a wall. In their own words, they said these kids haven't even had biology yet. They're admitting the kids don't have the capability to consent to the things that they are asking them to consent to. So that's one of the most important parts of it. The fact that we've been living under this lie and this delusion in recent years that we all acknowledge kids are not, they're not developed the way that adults are yet. They don't have the cognitive ability to consent to some things that adults can consent to. We protect kids in our law from people taking advantage of them, from people abusing them by pretending that they're able to give consent, which they're not. So we already protect kids from things like sex with adults, buying alcohol, buying cigarettes, getting tattoos, driving cars, buying guns. We already do that. But we've been living under this delusion somehow that in this area, kids are like adults. Somehow they understand if they're going at 9 years old, if they're going to want to have kids one day or not. They understand what they're giving up when they consent to being sterilized, chemically castrated, having their penis cut off as a child, having their breast cut off. Somehow we've been pretending like that's okay. It's not okay. These doctors admit in the files that the kids don't understand what they're consenting to. So that's one of the most important parts. The other important part, the second, I would say, important part is that these files reveal that the doctors know the extent of the harm they're causing. They know the harm, but they haven't been talking about it publicly. They say one thing publicly, but in these private internal documents and in these videos, they admit that the so-called gender affirming care is harming kids and in some cases leading to their death. There are files in there that show these doctors are aware that girls are developing liver cancer and tumors in their liver as a result of the hormone treatment, the testosterone, likely as a result. They say it's likely. The doctors say it's the hormones likely. And that this has happened more than once. In one case in the files, you see a doctor say they know a woman who died from this. They know this is happening. We also saw the president of WPATH, the president of this organization, Marcy Bowers, on video admitting and in writing admitting that in 100% of cases, 100%, the little boys that they give puberty blockers to at Tanner stage 2, so that's around 11 years old, that those little boys, as they grow into adulthood, are never able to achieve orgasm, to perform sexually. So you're essentially chemically castrating them for life if you give them puberty blockers at that age. The president of WPATH admits this on video. You can watch it. This is important because it directly contradicts one of the biggest lies they've been pushing on parents and on society, which is, they like to pretend that there's no permanent effects of puberty blockers. That's a lie. The president of WPATH is on record contradicting that. 100% of cases, 100% chemically castrated. That's very important. They like to say puberty blockers are just a pause button. They just pause puberty. That's not true. They have permanent, lifelong effects on these kids. So that's the second part, that they know about the harm they're causing. And the third most important part, I think, in this is that the doctors are aware that this is not evidence-based medicine. It's not scientific. That this is medical experimentation, that they're just spitballing it. The president of WPATH, Marcy Bowers, is also on camera saying, maybe we'll try giving puberty blockers earlier. Maybe we'll try later. Maybe we'll try stopping the puberty blockers for a while and see what happens. They're experimenting with the bodies and the lives of these children. They know this. Yesterday, we looked through some of the files where the doctors there's no evidence to support any of this. They're just spitballing in messages. I've got a child who says they're non-binary. Does anybody have ideas on what we could do for basically, they're talking about creating something that doesn't exist in nature. A nullification surgery, cutting off the penis, not creating a fake vagina, just having some kind of Frankenstein-looking Ken doll, non-genitalia. They talk about creating eunuchs. They use that word, eunuchs. They talk about taking the breasts off of young girls and not putting the nipples back on so that they have this, again, Frankenstein kind of appearance where they don't look human. They talk about all of the various problems that are coming from these so-called gender affirming surgeries. And they just go back and what experience do you guys have any recommendations for this kind of problem? Pain during intercourse, dryness, discharge. We looked at the case of a young man who died at 23 because of complications that they ignored. They canceled his appointments to try and learn how to detransition. His colon was falling out through his fake vagina. He ultimately died. He left, in his final words, he went on the internet and left negative reviews for the doctors who did this to him. And so those are the three most important parts of WPATH, I think. The WPATH files. If you talk about this with people, those are the three essential things to boil it down to. The children are not able to give informed consent, and the doctors know this. The doctors are aware of the harm that this is causing to children. They're aware of it, and they're aware that puberty blockers do cause permanent harm to the kids. And number three, this is medical experimentation. It's not based on science. It's not based on evidence. And the doctors know this as well. They're using these kids as guinea pigs, except it's not even on the level of a true experiment in which there would be a control group and they would be doing data analysis and following these kids through adulthood to actually get to create a study on what happened. It's not even being treated like an official experiment or trial. They're just experimenting on them willy-nilly. Those are the 3 most important things. I hope people keep talking about it. I hope we see more progress like we have in the UK this week of banning this for children. I don't care if it's the medical establishment self-regulating or if it's the government having to step in and say, "This is illegal, what you're doing." I don't care. So that's it. That's the WPATH wrap up. Robert. Hey, Robert. Robert says they know they're doing harm. They just don't care. Yeah, they don't. They're making a lot of money. Hey, Real Raven. I had seen that Yelp review that you showed. That was pretty devastating. That was Yarden. You guys go look it up. We covered it in the first video on WPATH. If you haven't seen it, it's pretty emotional, knowing what happened to him. That he was a casualty of this kind of psychopathic medical experimentation. Andrew Joyner, plenty of money to be made from trans kids. Yeah, they have patients for life. Okay, so on this Friday, moving on, we're going to cover just a couple of other things I saw in the news and sort of look at these things from the angle of how is woke culture influencing this. Let's start with, why don't we start with, let's start with Dylan Mulvaney. I'm sorry, we're starting with Dylan Mulvaney. So my friend Libby Emmons shared this. I know it's been going around. Lots of people have seen it now. I guess Dylan Mulvaney has now moved into the area of pop star. And you know that he didn't write this song or, this is the state this is the state of music today, that in pop music and how it's destroyed the art form, in my opinion, where any kind of internet celebrity is like, "I'm gonna be a musician now," and then have this algorithm driven song created and put out, and it's just, this makes a mockery of musicianship, I think. But that has nothing to do with the trans part. That's just with making a mockery of music, and that's been happening for a while. Um, okay, so my friend Libby Emmons shared this, and she said Dylan Mulvaney doesn't fantasize about being a woman. He fantasizes about being a girl. Femininity is a fetish that he uses to gain fame. I agree. Everything he does is he talks about girlhood, his days of girlhood, and that's the name of this song, Days of Girlhood. What he talks about in the lyrics of this song are, I guess, what he's trying to say makes a woman, makes a girl. And so the lyrics of this song are all about how, you know, you wake up, or Monday you can't get out of bed, Tuesday you go and get your pop your pills, get your meds. So he's talking about right off the bat, being a woman somehow means mental breakdowns, popping pills. You see him drinking champagne throughout. So it's like, I guess he's trying to present this idea of womanhood as pill popping, boozing, mental breakdowns. There's a lyric in here about having a breakdown in the bath. So mental breakdowns, casual sex. One of the lines in here, I think it's Wednesday or Thursday or something, he says, do a walk of shame. I didn't even know his name. So he's having sex with some random guy and walking home in the morning, but clearly actually not a walk of shame. He's not ashamed about it because he's singing about it like it's a part of being a woman, is to have anonymous sex. There's stuff in here about retail therapy and charging things to credit cards. And so for Dylan Mulvaney, and for I think a large portion of women, maybe womanhood is seen as boozing, pill popping, depression, mental breakdowns, overspending, and casual hookup sex. And I kind of made a joke about this because I said, that doesn't make a woman, it makes a leftist woman, which which I think I'm allowed to make that joke because I used to be a leftist woman, and there's some truth in it. Like with all things that I find funny, there's a little bit of truth in it. So here, let's just watch.
Ring the alarms immediately. We have a code pink.
Okay, so other women are on board with this. They're in the video. I mean, actual women, I should say. They're very happy to be a part of this video about what being a woman means to this man.
The champagne. Playing catch up as we miss the pregame. Pull up the group chat where you at, drop a pin. We're doing hot girl shit. Get in. Monday can't get out of bed. Tuesday morning pick up meds. Wednesday retail therapy.
Did you see that? Monday can't get out of bed. Tuesday morning pick up meds. There's a shot of his medicine cabinet. This is what being a woman is. I guess if your idea of being a woman is based on like the worst possible parts of human nature. Look at that medicine cabinet just full of pills. Okay. There's some truth in it though. Like I said, we've looked at on this channel before how the white women is the demographic that has the highest surge in so-called, I'm not saying that none of it's valid, but so-called depression, anxiety, definitely the highest surge in taking pharmaceuticals, SSRIs. It's through the roof. It's what I think it's at that level where you could call it an epidemic now. And so again, there's some truth in it. I would argue that if you looked at a breakdown of political ideology, you might see more leftist women in that graph.
Wednesday retail therapy. Cash or credit, I say yes. Thursday had a walk of shame. Didn't even know his name.
Thursday had a walk of shame, didn't even know his name. Okay. Yeah, so this is being a woman. I don't have a whole lot to say about that. Just the joke, I think, suffices. That part of this is on women. Part of this is on women who fit this stereotype. It's a real stereotype. And I think it's awful. This is not what being a woman is, but this is what society is selling women. Now they're using a man to sell it to women and to young women, young girls who follow Dylan Mulvaney. He's got a huge following among young people. Gee, man, I doubt he experiences shame. Yeah, I don't think he does. That's why he sings about it in such a casual way, like walk of shame. Like he's not really ashamed. I remember that phrase in college. Maybe some of you guys do. It actually was shameful when I used it. It was like an embarrassing thing. I don't think that a lot of maybe young people they don't experience that anymore because they've been raised in a culture that tells them there's nothing wrong with casual sex. Okay, speaking of sex, I saw this in the news as well. My pastor shared this. I wasn't even aware of this till I saw it. This is some good news. In my opinion, this is a win. Now, I know there's going to be probably some ANCAP people who don't agree, but, this is a reason why I'm not ANCAP. Pornhub suspends its site in Texas due to state's age verification law. This article came out yesterday. Legal experts say a Fifth Circuit decision to uphold part of a Texas law regulating adult entertainment websites conflicts with the U.S. Supreme Court precedent regarding minors' access to obscene material online. In the latest installment of the dispute between adult content websites and Texas lawmakers, Pornhub suspended service to Texans on Thursday, arguing a state law infringes on adults' rights to access protected speech. Pornhub, one of the most visited websites in the world, sued Attorney General Ken Paxton, that's our Texas Attorney General, last year to block enforcement of a 2023 state law that requires websites that host pornography to institute age verification measures and display health warnings on its pages. I don't see what the problem is with this. If you're hosting adult content, if you're hosting pornography, there are already laws on the books that make it illegal for adults to introduce to show pornography to children. And so if you're doing that, you should have to, if you're doing that online, rather, you should have to institute some kind of safety measure in which you at least try to attempt to verify the age of users. If you can't do that, then how do you know? And this has been one of the things people have pointed out. Pornhub can't tell you how many minors, how many children are watching porn on their site. They don't care. They don't care to know or to restrict it. So I don't see anything wrong with this. And as far as displaying health warnings, we've started doing that when it comes to vices like smoking, where they put health warnings on there. I don't see a problem with that either. So here's what people in Texas woke up to if they were trying to get their porn fix. This is what they woke up to, I think, yesterday. Can you guys see this? This account shared it. They said Breaking Pornhub has disabled its site in Texas over objections to a state law that requires age verification to prevent access to minors. So, and they're trying to the people, to the porn addicts coming there to see porn, they're trying to, I guess, galvanize them and rally them against the state, because this is the message they saw. Dear user, or part of it. Dear user, as you may know, your elected officials in Texas are requiring us to verify your age before allowing you access to our website. They're trying to verify your age before selling you cigarettes. They're trying to verify your age before selling you alcohol. They're trying to verify your age before giving you a gun. They want to verify your age before letting you drive a car. Can you believe this? They want to verify your age before letting us show you pornographic content. Isn't that crazy? They think we should have to know how old you are and if you're 10 years old or not before showing you hardcore porn. How crazy is that? Like, I love the way this is written. Like, it's like such an infringement, right? Your elected officials in Texas are requiring us to verify your age before allowing you access to our website. Not only does this impinge on the impinge, don't they mean infringe? Or is that, maybe I'm not as familiar with that word. Okay. Infringe on the rights of adults to access protected speech. It fails strict scrutiny by employing the least effective and yet also most restrictive means of accomplishing Texas' stated purpose of allegedly protecting minors. Allegedly. How's it the least effective and also the most restrictive? I don't know. I've got to think about that some more. While safety and compliance are at the forefront of our mission, providing identification every time you want to visit an adult platform is not effective. Really? They think they should be able to just put pornographic material online and have no way of verifying the age of the people accessing it. I don't, this is something where I come down on the side of the government saying, no, you're not allowed to do this, to show this to children, and we're going to enforce it. If you disagree, I'd like to hear from people who don't agree, because I don't really understand the arguments against it. I think they're mostly just based in, hating the government, hating government intrusion, which I do as well. But as we just talked about with the WPATH files, I think one of the few uses of the government, as I see it, is to enforce laws that prevent abuse of one party by another party, and specifically to prevent abuse of children. And so I don't have a problem with them saying, hey, we need to know you're an adult if you're going to be looking at this. Andrew Joyner, even libertarians can be stupid when they take their shit to the extreme. Real Raven, I would say the argument is anonymity. They want to be anonymous. Well, yeah, I don't place their desire to be anonymous when watching, engaging in their vice or whatever. I don't place that higher than making sure kids aren't getting access to it, or trying to make sure. Of course, in this day and age, it's still going to be easy for kids to see things they should not be seeing, even if you take out one of the most popular sites. But hey, Brahma Bull, good to see you. Brahma Bull, now go the next step and require age verification for drag shows too. Yes. G-Man. Okay. I'm looking for arguments against this because I'm curious. G-Man says right-wing authoritarianism is still authoritarian. Yeah, but they're not preventing you as an adult from accessing porn. They're saying you just have to prove you're an adult. So that doesn't hold water to me. It's not authoritarianism. They're not saying you can't watch the porn. They're just saying we want to make sure you're an adult doing it. Like if you go to the grocery store and try to buy booze or cigarettes, we want to know you're an adult. I thought it was age verification for the creators, not the viewers. No, it's for the viewers, but it's probably for the creators as well. Like accessing naughty channels on cable. Oh yeah, didn't they used to have that where you had to put in your age? Aaron, I would need to read the laws in specifics. There needs to be proper regulation, and pornographers have been on the front lines of free speech when made the targets of prosecution. Keri, did you know that Matt Walsh dismissed culture and entertainment? Did he? I didn't see that. That doesn't. I mean, they're creating culture. Daily Wire's been creating entertainment, so okay. Here's another little bit of wokeness that I saw on the news, and we're gonna do a little. I should have a whole segment called "Decoding Woke." I've started doing it on Twitter, just trying to define some of their newspeak, their lexicon of the new words that they create. What do they mean by it? What do they say this new word means? And what does it actually mean? And why are they pushing it? That kind of thing. So here's one that's been going around, and I think this one is worth highlighting because it shows how ubiquitous this has become, how social justice ideology or wokeness has influenced. It's not just in the gaming industry, which we're hearing about a lot lately. It's not just in knitting groups. It's just it's in these corporations, like at the very top and in their marketing. So they're coining new phrases. So this is if you guys don't follow End Wokeness, I highly recommend this account. They just document a lot of woke atrocities going on. So they posted this where they showed Advil. They say Advil just launched a campaign to achieve pain equity and end systemic pain racism. Now, you might be asking, we're about to look at the examples, but I just try to define it. People are asking what pain equity is supposed to mean. I did have some people in my comments asking, what is that? It just looks like word salad, but it makes sense if you know the belief system. It makes sense what they're trying to do. So they believe, again, social justice woke, they believe the best way to view the world is as this competition for power among identity groups, and that we need to redistribute power among identity groups in order to reach equality. And so it's like this mutated form of Marxism that's about power and identity rather than about wealth and class. But it's still got it was built off the back of Marxism, you could say, or it has roots in Marxism. So anytime you see this ideology, it grows, and it sort of like a virus, it just takes over all these different categories of identity, and then it uses these categories of identity, and it uses the language of the ideology to try and make try and get you to view everything through this lens. It is a world view. It's a belief system. You're supposed to view the whole world through this lens, right? And so you see these very cynical attempts from corporations taking advantage of it. You know that Advil probably got some great ESG points by doing this. But it's very cynical. So I said, here, this is what pain equity is. Advil's trying to take advantage of both pain and woke or social justice ideology. They're characterizing pain as something that so-called oppressed or marginalized groups feel more of, and they're using that to market their product more heavily to Black people. It's cynical and exploitative, yes. So they're exploiting people's pain. They're exploiting social justice. They're exploiting Black people. They're trying to take advantage of Black people. Like, oh yes, you have more pain than white people, and there's racism in the system. It doesn't acknowledge your pain. Black people, we see you. We see that your special, different degree of pain. Buy our product. Buy our meds. How awful is that? Look at some of the marketing here in the store. They have a hashtag BLKHLTH, Black Health, believe pain. It's kind of like believe all women, believe, there's this whole thing that we've talked about where within social justice ideology, they prioritize lived experience over objective truth, over argumentation, over reason, over good arguments. They say, you're supposed to believe the quote lived experience of anyone who's in one of these so-called marginalized identity groups. So that's part of that. You can see the ideology there in that slogan, believe pain. And then they have these stats on the left, or these little fact boxes next to their painkillers. 3 in 4 Black people suffering from pain believe there's bias in how pain is treated. Pain equity. Pain equity. Pain equity occurs when everyone can reach their full health potential. I wonder if pain equity actually, it's like maybe they're not selling as many painkillers as they would like to the Black demographic, and so this is the way they're sort of cynically like, we won't achieve, behind, away from the public. They're like, we're not going to achieve equity until we're getting Black people buying as much of this as white people do. Pain equity occurs when everyone can reach their full health potential. We commit to inspire change by elevating stories. What's that sound like? Prioritizing lived experience. Elevating stories and providing education. Together, we will address pain bias at the source. This is just a cynical use of social justice ideology to sell their product. It's kind of the way politicians use social justice to sell themselves, so you vote for them. They speak woke, so you'll vote for them. This is a corporation speaking woke, so you buy their meds. Here's the video they have to go with it.
Believe me when I say
I'm in pain.
Believe me when I say
I'm in pain.
Believe me when I say, and believe me when I say,
my pain is real.
BelieveMyPain.com.
Believe me when I say
It seems like it's like a joke almost, like if someone were going to make a satire, like make a comedy sketch about a company. I could see somebody coming up with this idea, like, let's pick a company that really has nothing to do with social justice or identity groups, or okay, how about Advil? Let's do Advil. What would if they did a woke ad, what would it be? How about Black people saying you need to believe their pain? If they did a woke ad trying to sell more pills to Black people, what would it be? This would be it. It's almost like satire. That's why in this world, this crazy world we're living in that's been just dominated by social justice ideology, a lot of times it's hard to do satire because what's happening around us in the real world is so insane. You have to take satire to another level because it's reality. Therese, it looks like a skit on Normal World. Yes. Woke pharma. Yes, exactly, G-Man. I'm in pain. Believe me. Okay, I pulled this up because it really made me think of there's a great documentary series on Netflix that my husband and I watched recently, or a few months ago, probably. Maybe 2023 we watched it. It's been a little while. And it's all about the Oxycontin crisis and the company that was putting this out on the market, and about the lawsuit that eventually brought them down. It's called Painkiller. It's a great documentary. Oh, it's not a documentary. Let me correct myself. It's based on true events, but it's dramatized. They even create a couple of composite characters, but there are actual people represented as well. Like Matthew Broderick plays the president of this big pharma company, who was a real person. So it's a dramatized version of true events. That's more accurate. It's called Painkiller. Matthew Broderick is amazing in it. I would definitely recommend it. And it really, watching it now, it puts some things in perspective about the COVID years, about pharmaceutical companies. And, we were talking in the last episode of Kerfefe Break about being mistrustful of doctors, of the whole medical profession now, which I am because of the transing kids thing, because of the COVID years. I just don't give them that level of respect and authority that I used to. And this documentary, this fictionalized version of real events, this dramatized series, also put some things in perspective for me about being skeptical of big pharma. I'm going to put this up on the screen. This was a clip from that series that I went and pulled because the Advil, like the very cynical abuse of people's pain, like trying to make money off of people's pain, reminded me of a specific part of Painkiller, of this series. And they even included this line. I was looking for this line from the series, and they put it in the trailer, which made it easy for me to pull it. So just watch this, how they talk about exploiting pain. Oh, I don't know if it's going to play. Maybe it's not going to work. Here, let me just try to refresh this. My apologies. Okay.
All of human behavior is essentially comprised of two things: run from pain, run toward pleasure. Pain, pleasure, pain, pleasure. If we place ourselves right there between pain and pleasure, we will never have to worry about money again.
Pain is no longer something we have to tolerate. We have an answer.
All of human behavior is
It made me think of this because that's the way they really marketed it and pushed it. You get to see, like, that woman that we just saw at the end of the clip. You see her, and they would hire these young, very attractive women to go out and pimp the OxyContin to doctors and try to increase the number of doctors that were pushing it on their patients. And they would do these conventions where they would have these attractive young women standing in front of a room of doctors and explaining why they need to be pushing this on their patients. And she used a lot of the same language that Advil is using. She was they would talk about pain being this kind of oppression, and people don't have to be under this oppression anymore. And don't you want to relieve this for your patients and, free them from the bondage of pain, kind of thing. And the Advil ad makes me think of that. It's very like, they're taking advantage of people in pain. Like, they're just sort of, let's put ourselves right in the center of that, and then we'll never have to worry about money again. Thank you for the super chat, Mark. Mark for $5 says, "We are made for religion and faith. Contemporary critical theory, trans abortion is religion for their dogmatic supporters and blindness. I think likely the number one place to fix it." Wow, thank you for this super chat. And it's such an interesting comment for you to make, because the next thing I have pulled up to show, I kind of was thinking, I don't know if I'm going to make these things relate, but your super chat takes me right into this next thing. So let me just get this on the screen, because I think it speaks to what you're speaking to, Mark, and I appreciate you. Here, James Lindsay was just on Joe Rogan. It's a great interview. There's a clip of it I wanted to share with you. Now, remember, James Lindsay is an atheist, but I've had several conversations with him. There's a conversation here on my channel on Deprogrammed. If you want to go back and watch it, if you haven't seen it yet, it's a conversation with myself, James Lindsay, and my pastor, Bradley Helgerson from Church on the Square. And we talk about social justice. We talk about this culture war we're in and whether or not it's truly actually a spiritual war. And he's an atheist who agrees that it's a spiritual war. He sees the importance of faith in God, even if he himself is not there yet. I'm joking. I joke about, one day I'll convert my atheist friends, but it's a joke. That's not up to me. That's up to God. So this is a clip from James on Joe Rogan, where he talks about the importance of God. And I just found myself yelling, yes, yes, yes. He talks about how a belief in something bigger than yourself, and not just bigger than yourself, but bigger than the state, being beholden to something bigger than the state, like God. He said that's really the only answer to totalitarianism. That's the cure. And this is an atheist saying this. So take a look at this. No, not again. Why am I having so many buffering issues? Okay.
The cult are treated as people, and the people who don't go along with it have to be treated as non-people. And that's Mao Zedong gave a famous speech in 1957 where he actually said, to not have a correct political orientation is like not having a soul. So you're no better than a capitalist running dogs. You're no better than the dogs. Well, I mean, we like dogs, but you know what I mean, how he would have meant it. And so it's like, you're no better than an animal if you don't go along with this. And that's what you're saying. That's a cult. And all this bears the hallmarks of a cult.
And it feels like that is a natural pattern that humans fall into. And I think particularly if you're not religious, I think one of the things about religious people is they've already got their thing, so, and hopefully it's one that promotes good values and it's a good thing.
Yeah.
But there's a part in the brain that wants that thing.
Yeah.
And atheists, they don't have a religion, and so they find a social religion. They find
social religion. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. That's
Yes.
exactly right. So they find it in their social circumstances, politics, economics, and it always goes demonic when they do that. I've been spending a lot of time.
See, a Christian would say, by the way, where Joe Rogan there is saying it's almost like there's a part in our brain that's made for God, that's made for religion. I mean, I would say, yes, that's how you were designed by your creator. That's what I believe. Sort of like my pastor, Bradley Helgerson, has done sermons on like the philosophically, like what's the best way to view man. And he sort of went through these different things. Like, is it I think, therefore I am, that, or is it I emote, I have emotions, therefore I am, or is it, and he argues it's actually I worship, therefore I am, that humans are created uniquely set apart from animals to have this relationship with our creator, to worship. And I know that may sound so foreign to non-believers. Maybe it sounds just ludicrous, but that's really the direction in which I've been moving in terms of thinking about human consciousness, what sets us apart from animals, what part of us is eternal, connected to the creator. Of course, Of course, my mind would go there, and maybe yours wouldn't if you're not a believer, because I believe in a creator. But I think that it's so interesting for me to hear James Lindsay and Rogan talking about this, and Rogan's like, yeah, maybe there's a part of the brain that's designed for this. And I'm saying, yes, yes, there is. And if you don't fill it with God, you're going to fill it with something else that, as James Lindsay says, always goes demonic. I also agree with that as a Christian. If you fill that God hole with something else, it always goes wrong. It went wrong for me.
Thanks to Charlie Kirk.
Maybe
That's
rewind.
exactly right. That's exactly right. So they find it in their social circumstances, politics, economics, and it always goes demonic when they do that. I've been spending a lot of time, thanks to Charlie Kirk, I've been spending a lot of time paying attention to the tenets of Christianity and studying it. And it's got a lot of good advice in there. But you're 100% right that if you try to lack a religion, and the primary thing with the religion, so if you lack a religion, then it'll get filled in with other things for very many people. I think there's a small
Yes. Now, Lindsay, and this is where he and I probably disagreed and disagreed in our conversation with my pastor, is I think I asked him, it's been a while since that conversation, but I can't remember how it played out. But what I recall from it was that he seemed to be saying that he might be one of this small percentage of people who don't have that God hole, or who don't need that that something to put in that place of worship and allegiance. And I'm not convinced of that. I'm not convinced of that as obviously as a believer, because I think maybe he just hasn't had that experience yet of needing something to put higher than himself. But I think this is so interesting. Okay, let's continue.
all percentage of people, for maybe that doesn't apply, but
There's a spot in your brain for it.
But the thing that, why do they go after Christians and Jews so hard everywhere they go? And the reason is because they are completely committed to, they're not, when you say, they already have their thing, for Christians and Jews, that's not how they think about God. It's not their thing. That's something that's above everything else.
Well,
Yes.
the Muslims as well.
Well, Muslims too. But Islam's a little bit different because it's got a political element worked into it. And I'm not trying to like throw shade. I'm just saying that with the state is never above God in Christianity and Judaism, ever. The state and God are somewhat intertwined, or can be in Islam, but it's not. So they're not quite identical, but it's true. The God is above state, no question. So when the state shows up and says to you, hey, you're going to do X, Y, Z, or else, and it goes against your religion, if you're a Christian or Jew, and to many, if it's not Islam, a Muslim, you're going to say, no, I have a higher duty, and it's not to the state. And if you kill me, I'm going to a better place, so I don't care.
Yes.
And that's the enemy of totalitarianism in a way that nothing else is.
Yes. This is why they're so godless and they hate God. I completely agree with James Lindsay, who's an atheist, but we agree on this. I know it sounds cheesy to some. They won't be able to hear what I'm saying, but I absolutely believe God is the antidote to woke, to social justice, to totalitarianism, to authoritarianism, to all of it. And not just those things. I think God's the antidote to anything that plagues humanity, that plagues an individual human, even to any kind of ill. I think God's the cure. I know I sound like one of those, I probably sound like one of those cheesy Jesus, Christian rock bands or something. And the Larry Norman, I just discovered Larry Norman. I love it. That song, Why Don't You Try Jesus? I'm like, I love it. I'm with it. I know what he's saying. I'll be that cheesy old lady. I don't care. Because I think it's the cure. I think it helps people. I think God helped people. He wants to help people. And you can see that on a micro level with an individual person, and transforming a person, transforming a soul, pulling people like myself out of addiction, out of bad behavioral decisions, and out of immorality, out of all kinds of things that plague humans. You can see that on an individual level, but you can also see it on a macro level. I really believe that. It's if a society has God, I don't talk about an individual, but let's say a society, if we hadn't abandoned and forgotten God, we wouldn't be at the mercy of this evil ideology. It would not be able to control us and manipulate us and use us and abuse us in the same way, because at the end of the day, there's nothing that they can take from us, because our belief is in something higher and bigger. And like James Lindsay said, it's like, I'm not going to go along if the state tells me to do something that I find to be immoral. I don't have to go along with that, because I believe in a higher power. And what he says about, and if you imprison me and kill me, and it's okay, because I believe in God. I'm going to a better place. This is man's world. This is man's law. And that frees people from the bondage of having to worry about what the state can do to them. I don't know if that makes sense, but I really loved this clip, and it made me think of Alexander Solzhenitsyn. I posted this in response to him. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah. He gave a speech called "Men Have Forgotten God." And I just want to read this excerpt from it. I'm going to actually, why don't I pull up the whole speech and link it? I found the whole thing reprinted in a National Review article. So I'll drop the link here in the chat to the whole speech. But this part, this is something Alexander Solzhenitsyn was saying. He said, "More than half a century ago, while I was still a child, I recall hearing a number of older people offer the following explanation for the great disasters that had befallen Russia. Quote, 'Men have forgotten God. That's why all this has happened.' End quote. Since then, I have spent well nigh 50 years working on the history of our revolution. In the process, I have read hundreds of books, collected hundreds of personal testimonies, and have already contributed 8 volumes of my own toward the effort of clearing away the rubble left by that upheaval. But if I were asked today to formulate as concisely as possible the main cause of the ruinous revolution that swallowed up some 60 million of our people, I could not put it more accurately than just to repeat, quote, 'Men have forgotten God. That's why all this has happened.'" Here's the full speech. It was from a 1983 speech. And I put the link in the chat. Go read it if you have a chance. I think it's so true. I don't think we have enough I don't know if we have enough conversations about this, about the real antidote to woke, because I know even myself sometimes it's like I want people who are not believers to listen to my criticisms of social justice ideology and not be turned off. I want them to, and my criticisms are based in, I don't have to base them in scripture alone. I can base them in, obviously I'm basing them in reason and logic. The ideology is racist, it's sexist, it promotes judging and treating people differently on the basis of race and sex identity. There's so many things wrong with that I can criticize, absence of scripture. But at the same time, I feel like if I'm just criticizing it in that way, sometimes I'm not explaining what I believe to be the true problem, which is society abandoning God. So I don't know. It's an interesting balance trying to do both. I mean, when you're posting your thoughts for anyone to read, sometimes I'm specifically talking to people who share my belief system, who are Christians. Other times I'm talking to everyone, and it's just an interesting kind of balance. So I know some people, they hear the kind of stuff James is saying here about God, and then they just immediately are like, wall comes down. I mean, even in a thread, I had a thread on my Facebook about the Dylan Mulvaney video. It was the joke I made about how none of this stuff makes a woman, it makes a leftist woman. And some stranger, some woman, she came in, there was a friend who had commented, "We should pray for him," which is a very beautiful sentiment. Very beautiful to say that. And if you don't agree with that, or if you don't believe in prayer, or you're an atheist or whatever, why can't you scroll past that? Obviously, you don't believe in prayer, so why does it bother you? But this stranger, this woman, felt she was so angered by, She was so angered by someone saying we should pray for him. She had to comment like, your sky daddy doesn't exist. What, trading one delusion for another. Like, what is wrong with you? Why does this guy praying for that guy bother you so much? You're not even involved in that equation. Where's all that anger come from? And so I know people like her, it's sort of, if I have criticisms about woke, like someone who's that uh what's antagonistic towards, contemptuous towards God, is not going to hear me if I only talk about scriptural reasons why I oppose woke. And I'm a person who believes, I talked about this with I think it was Michelle from Force of Light. Oh no, actually it was with Leslie from the Radical Center. We were talking about this. Almost everything that scripture, I think, says or prohibits, or it's because it's true, because these are real warnings about morality. I believe it to be true. You don't have to base your arguments only in scripture because you can see the real world effects. I don't know if I'm making sense here, so let me try and be more clear. For example, the Bible talks about sexual immorality, and there's obviously there's warnings, there's instruction not to be sexually immoral. But if you're explaining to someone like Leslie and I were talking about, if you're talking about negative effects of sexual immorality and the harms of sexual immorality, you can do that without just basing it in scripture, because you can see real world effects. You can see the effects of, well, if you talk about porn addiction, for example, you can see the effects in destroyed marriages, erectile dysfunction, inability to get off with your partner or your spouse. Like, you can see that. You can point to those effects. And you don't have to just say, because scripture says so. So as a Christian, sometimes you're in this place, I think, of saying, because scripture says so, but also look at these results. This is why scripture says so. You can see the fruits. You can see evidence. And you can use reason and look at evidence, and you don't have to base it just in scripture. Does that make sense? Yes, Raphael, it's an operator's manual. I kind of think of it now as like the cliff notes of life, because a lot of these things I sort of, you can come to conclusions without being a believer. James Lindsay and I share a lot of conclusions, even though he's an atheist. But then I look at scripture and I say, wow, a lot of these conclusions I came to, the Bible are sort of like a cliff notes. I didn't have to do all that. I didn't have to learn everything the hard way. The Bible was like telling me this. Like, this was a shortcut I could have taken if I had just listened. Does that make sense? I don't know. So let's see. Oh, hey, my husband's here. Hello, Anthony. My husband's on the road working hard this weekend, and I miss you. I miss him. Okay. Fernando. Hello, sir. From Germany, all the way from Germany. Thanks for the super chat. 249 euros. Thank you. He says, I still don't get why he, I guess James Lindsay and Kelly J had beef. I didn't even know they had beef. There's so many things online that I don't see, so I don't know why. And I didn't know that even happened. So Cheeky Mayor put up a link for the discussion I had with James Lindsay and my pastor, Bradley Helgerson. If you guys want to go watch it, it's one of my favorite conversations. Skillet for $5. Thank you. Says, keep it up. I've been getting a ton out of your excellent coverage of the WPATH files this week. Thanks. Oh, thank you for that. Thank you for that encouragement. Thank you very much for that. Because sometimes it's like, am I talking about this? Are other people as interested in this as me? I think this is so important. Am I just beating a dead horse? I appreciate it. I hope people read them, or if they don't read them, they take those 3 essential points and are able to talk about it with people that they know. Super based. Hello. Thank you for the $5 super chat. Happy Friday. God is great. Thank you for fighting for the soul of the West. Cheers to the fellowship. Cheers to you. Your chat makes me smile, makes me very happy. It is a happy Friday. I hope everybody's having a happy Friday. John says, "Godless, unmoored, we drift." I believe that. I'm one of the people who believes that. Dion says, "Mysticism keeps men sane." Aaron Taylor says, "I think it's important to distinguish between atheism and agnosticism, but I speak as an agnostic that sees the faith of others as a beautiful thing when expressed." I think you're right. Agnosticism is the label we've given to people who they're more open-minded to the possibility of God. They don't say definitively, "I know there's no God," or they're sort of open to the possibility. And I know actually not all atheists say, "I know definitively there's no God." They just say they don't believe. Excuse me. Some of them, they just say they don't believe. But I think you're right. Those years when I was adrift, when I was in the social justice religion, the woke cult for 20 years, I always described myself as agnostic. I never described myself as atheist because there was still always a part of me that was like, I don't know enough to say one way or the other. And I guess you could say I kept the part of my heart open to the possibility of God. But I was very prejudiced against God, even though I said I was agnostic. In my case, I was very prejudiced specifically against Christianity and against Christians. KB, yes, thank you. It's been hard to listen to, but important. Please keep going. Thank you, KB. G-man, agnostics need to S-word or get off the pot. What? God has his own timeline for people. I was on that pot for a long time, G-man. I think it's okay to be in that place of I don't know, Okay. I've got something else. Again, not sure if I'm gonna draw a straight line to how I got here and what I was thinking about, but someone shared this. They tagged me in this today, and I was thinking about James Lindsay's interview, and I was thinking about whether or not humans have this God-shaped hole, or as Joe Rogan said, a place in your brain for God, for worship. And then someone tagged me in this, and it kind of brought to mind the recent Super Bowl ad that I covered about, though I think most of us saw, the supposedly Christian organization that's putting out these sort of woke ads about Jesus, and they're called He Gets Us. And then there was the guy who made the remake of the ad that I thought was just so much better, that said, He saves us. Anyway, this person shared this, and it's just a good reminder of how contrary the gospel is to the popular modern wisdom, a lot of it influenced by social justice. So, because sometimes these popular sayings or beliefs we can pick up ourselves, even as Christians, you can start to pick these up and not even realize you're doing it. And then every once in a while you need that stark reminder that, no, that's not what the Bible says. These platitudes sound good, like follow your heart. Like I've talked about that one before, follow your heart, which is actually, no, the heart is deceitful. Some people, murderers follow their heart, serial killers follow their heart. There are people who their heart tells them they delight in doing evil. Like your heart is not a good navigation system always, right? And so here are some of these. Who shared this with me? Scott McKenzie. Thank you, Scott McKenzie. He said, Jesus didn't say to live your truth. Live your truth is a woke phrase, again, about lived experience. Your truth, as if truth is subjective. No, truth is not subjective. Jesus didn't say to live your truth. He said, I am the truth. Jesus didn't say to follow your heart. He said, follow me. Jesus didn't say have confidence in yourself. He said trust in God. Jesus didn't say good people go to heaven. He said those who believe in me will have eternal life. Jesus didn't say be who you want to be. He said be who I called you to be by abiding in me. Jesus didn't say go out and gain a following. He said be a follower and then go out and make followers of others. I just liked these reminders, and yeah, I thought I would share that. It's a good illustration of how different today's common wisdom, these sort of positive sounding, they sound like words of wisdom, right? Like follow your heart, live your truth, no. No. Jesus was demanding. Yes, he was. Okay. I've got some other stuff. I don't know if I'm going to touch on this. I had some C.S. Lewis pulled up, but I don't think I'm going to get into that today. This is the way. He is the way. Raphael, I'm not sure what that meant. Can you be specific? Not sure which part. If you want me to try and explain what I think those things that Jesus said mean, I'm not sure what you mean. Fernando for 249, thank you, sir, says, which version of the Bible should I start with? Oh, I'm not the best person to ask. I should ask my friend Michelle from Force of Light, or I should ask my pastor. I'll do that, and I'll give you their answers in the next video, because I'm just going to tell you what I read, and it's not based on any study of which is the best version. So I'm sure there are going to be Christians who hear this and say, no, why is she recommending that one? It's only because my first women's Bible study group, this is the version of the Bible they gave me. They gave me an English Standard Version. And so I read that one most often. And then sometimes I go online, I look at the King James Version, because I like the way the words are, it's written more like poetry, I think, which is interesting. I like to see the difference between those two. Yeah, Spaceman says King James. But yeah, I have an ESV, I have an English Standard Version. I also refer to, probably the second most often, I refer to the King James. John, I like to read multiple versions. Yeah, I do. I'll go online and I'll look up a verse sometimes. There's Bible Hub and other places like that where you can look up a verse and then you can look at the different versions, how they translate it. The one that I know a lot of Christians make fun of is the Word. I just learned about this version. Apparently there's some, I guess it's a new version. I'm just learning about it. And I've just seen some Christian memes in Christian forums where they're kind of just teasing, mocking a little bit about how the Word, I guess, is supposed to be translating it into the modern vernacular. So don't read the Word. That's all I know. Marby Dogs recommends ESV. That's the one I have. The CSB, the King James Version, the New International Version. So many, yeah. CSB, Christian Standard Bible. That's what Therese reads. Hey, Maria. You guys, this is Maria from Tuscan Knits, from the SJW, the Woke Knitting Wars. One of the heroes, one of the people I greatly admire. Good to see you, lady. She says, hey, Keri, this is Tuscan Knits. I just popped in to listen. I also love the King James Version because it's so beautiful to read. It is. It's more like poetry, that one. And it just sounds, there's something about speaking in that way that maybe it's just in our minds. In my mind, it carries more authority when you say thou than you. Okay, so here's someone who doesn't like the King James Version. Mark says, avoid the King James Version. The New King James is still lovely. lovely sounding, but avoids some of the errors that King James made. Okay, I was waiting for people who know a little bit more about the different versions to show up, because I'm not that person. I don't know enough about that yet. Fernando, thank you for your answers. So he says, Fernando, there's the New King James is still lovely sounding, but avoids some errors supposedly in the original King James. Thy verily, though thee. Yes, it does sound. That's why I joke on my profile. My pronouns are you, your mom, and thou, because thou is just just sounds so fancy. Hey, Yarn Chicken and Shit is here. She says, my Old Testament is an English translation of the girl. I'm not going to pronounce that right. I'm not going to try. I'm sorry. I wish you were here on camera with me. You could tell people how to say that. The Levine Show, Aaron Taylor says the Levine Show, I'm not familiar with that show, had Pastor Henry Hildebrandt on today to talk about the charges stayed, delivered a very good prayer at the end, and he's well-spoken and highly intelligent. I'll have to check that out. I haven't heard of that show. It's not possible to know God, says our current. So when people say they are believers, that means nothing. Well, I'd have to ask. I mean, I'm assuming you're not a believer, or you don't believe in God. So if I'm wrong, please correct me. But obviously I don't agree. I do believe I know God just in the way that God has transformed my life, not just from the outside looking in, but not just from the things I abandoned and gave up that I never thought I would abandon, but the way in which I view the world is so different, radically different. And the way in which I interact with the world and interact with people is so different. And that's not me. That joy comes from God. So I don't know I'm trying to explain it for someone who doesn't believe in God, because that's what I assume that you don't. But how could I put it? How could I put it in a way that makes sense? Okay. Sometimes I get compliments where people say, oh, like some of the ones I get are, oh, you have a joy about you, or you're so loving to people or welcoming or things like that. These are some of the nicest compliments I get. I appreciate them greatly. Thank you. But what I know, and I would like to say, but I don't sometimes, because I don't want to seem like I'm like, throwing off a compliment, but is that's not me. That's the spirit. That's God in me. And to a believer, that may not make sense, but I mean, a non-believer, that may not make sense, but that's really truly something that's come from me trying to know God, trying to walk the path, being a believer. And I think people you're born with certain traits and you're born with certain talents. And I think God accentuates those and pulls those beautiful things out of you, and also helps to root out the negative parts of human nature, and whatever your habits are, your bad habits, your failings, the sins that you fall into repeatedly, helps you to get out of those things over time. And so that's what knowing God is. It's a walk. It's like oh gosh, I'm going to sound like some reality TV person. It's a journey. It was a journey. It sounds like, but it is. It's a everyday thing. It's a practice. It's an exercise, like going to the gym. It's an everyday thing. And I don't know. That's the best way I can explain it. If you want to hear how someone might explain it who disagrees with you. Sorry, this has become just talking about God, but this stuff interests me. Maybe it interests some of you. Maria says, I've had other believers come up to me and say they can tell I have the joy of the Lord in me without me having said anything about my faith. That's always a good feeling. Yes. That is a good feeling, because the fruits of the Spirit are showing in you. I had a friend who was saying this about his mom to me recently, that everywhere, or I have a friend who was saying this about his mom, that everywhere she went, she would strike up conversations with people, the most random place. I was like, yes, I know what that's like. But also he said that people would ask her, they would say, "Are you a Christian?" Like they would see it in her. She wouldn't bring it up. And this was after, years of her on the path, on God's path, like that it was just something that flowed out of her in the way. And it wasn't just my friend describing his mom in this way. It was a multitude of people describing his mother in this way and how many lives she touched. And I just thought, what a great testimony for that to be your life's work, is people remember you for having helped to pull joy out of them, but I love that, Maria. This has been a beautiful stream, Keri. Well, good. Okay. I know some people probably turned it off. Like, I don't want to hear the God stuff. That's okay. Come back when we're not talking about the God stuff. But Dion says, my great grandmother was like that. She radiated peace and kindness. I mean, what a blessing, Life is short. You can't take any of the worldly things with you. None of it. And when you come to the end of your life, what are people going to remember about you? What's the most meaningful thing? The most meaningful things. And it's like none of the way the world measures success, I don't think matters. Therese, I'm currently in Deuteronomy talking about idols. I think a lot of culture now is idolatry. It is. And what I've been learning about myself, and I've been learning about how you can make idols of, people like your husband. You can make an idol of your kids. You can make an idol of, even if you think, well, hey, I'm good, I'm not making an idol of these things that are very common to make idols of in society, but there's still things you can do that you can start to elevate above God. And that's a trap for some people. I would suggest, my pastor just gave 2 great sermons back to back. I think it's part of a series he's doing. He gave one, which is already out, the Church on the Square on YouTube, and it's about the failure of fathers to teach their children. And the one that he gave after that, the one he gave this past Sunday, which I don't think is out yet, but should be out soon, is about disciplining children. And one of the things he said in that sermon was that in modern culture, a lot of parents have made children into idols where they're afraid to discipline them. They're afraid to, hurt their feelings, or, the modern culture teaches sort of an inversion, the opposite of what's true about kids, and allows kids to become like little kings, like little tyrants, because there's no, some parents are maybe act more like they're the friend of their child than they do like a parent who's supposed to offer structured discipline, wisdom, lessons, instruction. And I thought that was so true. That I'm not a parent, I hope to be, but I think it's very easy. This is one of those things that modern culture, one of these ideas that modern culture pushes on us that sounds good, but it's not actually good for your child, and it's not good for your relationship with your child, not to discipline them, not to offer them guidelines, boundaries, fence posts for behavior. I don't know if you can hear that, but I think the cats are having a fight under our house. There are cats and raccoons in our walls right now. I thought the raccoons had left. They're back. If they did leave, they're back. There's also 2 black cats who are in there. We are getting ready to start renovation on the outside of the house. It's been a little delayed, but that is happening this year. And I can't wait because we can finally plug in these access points. The raccoons have had babies in the wall. I heard them. I looked up on YouTube, what do baby raccoons sound like, and confirmed that that's what I was hearing. And the cats occasionally get in screaming fights with them. So I don't know if you can hear that, but this is all madness. I can't wait until it's over. Yeah, this has been we live in this house. For anyone who's new to the channel, my husband and I were able to buy this beautiful 110-year-old house, and we've been renovating it, and nobody lived in it for like 30 years before us. So there was a lot of stuff that needs to be done. But because it was in such bad shape, we got a great price on it. And so we've been redoing it. We did this. This is the room. The studio is the room we did most recently. And we've, had to put in, we had a company come in and fix the foundation. We had people come in and do HVAC, heating and air, electricity, plumbing, those kind of things. But then with the sheetrocking, sanding and finishing floors, painting, all that kind of stuff, we've been doing with our friend David, who's a contractor. We're doing a lot of the stuff like that we can do ourselves. But the exterior has to be done. We were hoping financially we could wait a bit, but the exterior of the house needs attention, and some of the wood is rotting. So we're going to have the whole exterior and the balcony replaced, everything. And when that happens, part of that, I think, is hopefully evicting our furry creatures from living in our house, and living in the walls, and sealing up those access points. It's getting really, imagine like sitting down trying to have a nice quiet dinner with your spouse, or maybe sitting down to enjoy a movie or doing a podcast, whatever it is you're doing, and then in the walls you hear this screeching and scurrying about, and you're just like, oh no, what's happening in there? Like, I hope they're not chewing through any wires. It's just, I can't wait for this part to be over. The tiger hates it. He just starts barking. He doesn't do anything. He just barks. But yes, yes, OMG, yes, that's what it's been like now, and every day. And so I'll be on the phone with a friend. I was on the phone with a friend the other day, and I just was like, hold on, because it's such a habit now. There's one part of the wall when I hear them scratching and making, I've got a broom handle and I just beat on the, like, get out of my house, get out. I'm like hoping to make it uncomfortable for them. They don't care. It doesn't, they get quiet for a second and then they go right back to having a party, whatever they're doing. So, oh man, I was on Lauren Shen's show 2 days ago, and somebody left a comment that called us luxury females. I was like, wow, out of all the funny things I've been accused of being, I thought that was a new one, a luxury female. If only you knew the luxury of living with various woodland creatures in your walls. Anyway. Okay. It's a Good Friday. Thanks for hanging out today. We did kind of a more frivolous stream. We did hit on some news items that I think are important. Actually, stuff that I was sharing about my beliefs about God and totalitarianism, the clip from James Lindsay, I think is so important. So we talked about some stuff. I think it's really important. Had a little fun there at the end. I hope you guys have a great weekend, and we'll be back on Monday. I've got some interviews in the can. They're going to be coming out soon. If you are in the Austin area or you want to travel to Austin, Minds Fest is happening April 27th. I've had some people reach out to me about, we're going to do a Deprogrammed meetup, and it's going to be on the 26th. I don't have other details yet, but just if you're coming to town specifically for Minds, know that on Friday afternoon, or is that the Thursday afternoon? It's the day before. On the 26th, we're going to be doing some kind of meetup in the afternoon if you want to come for that too. And I'll let you know more about that as the date approaches. Also, our ticket link is live. It's been live for a week or two now, for our house concert. My husband and I do concerts here in this home that we're renovating. So I warn you, you'll see it every time people come over, we're at a different stage of renovation. We're doing another one March 29th, and this is going to be a really special one. One of his friends from Germany is visiting, his friend from Munich, who is a really excellent guitarist, violinist, and he also plays pedal steel. And then another friend of his who's an amazing upright bass player is going to be here. So this is going to be like a classic country show. We do kind of different theme music for each show. That's going to be on March 29th, which is a Friday, in our home. And if you would like tickets, we don't post the ticket link publicly because it's our home. We send it out privately to a list that we've been curating. If you want the ticket link, drop me an email. Several people already did. I think I got all of you. If I didn't get you, if I didn't give you the link yet, let me know. It's deprogrammedpod@gmail.com. Just tell me who you are in the chat so I can try and make sure, keep out evildoers. And anyway, send me an email if you'd like a link to the house concert, to the ticket page. And I think that's all. I will see you guys later. Have a great weekend. Take care.